Welcome to Movies We Like, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
It's me, Pete.
On today's episode, we have invited filmmaker Mark Pellington to talk about Bennett Miller's Moneyball, a movie he likes. Mark, welcome to the show.
How are you guys? Nice to see you. Nice to be here talking about movies, my favorite thing.
Absolutely. Very much excited to talk to you about this, and very much excited to talk about this movie. This is a first for us. We've talked about Moneyball over on our other podcast, The Next Reel, but we haven't talked about it here.
It's been years. It's been a long time.
And considering this is also one of Pete's favorite movies, we said, you know what? Let's talk about Moneyball. Yeah,
I think 5 years ago, if you had asked me to be on it, it wouldn't have been there.
Oh, okay.
It aged up, huh?
Yeah, only really in the last 3 years, I think since COVID, where I've spent more time at home and just really vaulted to the top of my deep dive appreciation, like 15, 20 times, see all the layers and all the lines. And then when I met Bennett recently, that really took it to the next level. And he told me a couple of anecdotes that were just fucking great.
Wow. Well, I hope we're going to get to hear some of that stuff. So that's exciting. Before we dig too deep into that, though, let's talk a little bit about you, a little bit about your history and how you kind of came into the film industry. I know it was kind of circuitous through MTV and videos and all sorts of things. But I mean, and you've been keeping busy in the industry steadily since essentially you started all the way back there working in those TV days, huh?
40 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that this morning when I was looking at your catalog. It's like, I was a fan of your work when I was 10.
If you say you watched Jeremy when you were 8, I'm ending the... Fuck off. I was in junior high. And why don't they ever pick another video? Like when I saw 9 Inch Nails or when I saw Bruce Springsteen, like
it's always Jeremy.
Because Jeremy hit look.
You know what? I'm gonna give you a softball though, because it wasn't actually Jeremy. It was PM Dawn. I was a massive PM Dawn fan, man. So
it's a great album.
It's a great album.
The first 2 records, but that first one is genius.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a good PM Dawn story, right?
Outstanding.
So I had made mostly hip hop, rap, and dance videos from 87 to 90. Information Society,
Pure Energy,
Crystal Waters, She's Homeless, Information Society, 2 big hits. So I had not done any rock videos. And Island Records, I had done a video for Disposable Heroes of Hypocrisy, Michael Franti's band. And when we did the PM Dawn video down in Miami, right? And I met the guys. I met Prince B and Jared, his cousin, right? Island Records was 2 blocks from my house in Manhattan, my apartment on Lafayette Street. So I go down and meet them, and they're like, he's all like, Prince B's like very trippy and blah, blah, blah.
And you're channeling them right now.
I was probably 29 years old at the time. They were like 18 and 20.
Yeah.
And we're leaving Island right down at 4th, right next to Tower Records at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about records and samples and all their samples. And I said, oh, God, you guys should sample ELO. And they're like, who? Electric Light. You've never heard Electric Light Orchestra? I'm like,
no.
I said, come with me.
Yeah,
we walked
school them a little bit.
We walked up to my place, and I played Steve Miller Band, ELO, Fleetwood Mac. They took a stack of records from me that I never got back. Right? Especially ELO. It's, great samples in that shit. Great samples. And they're sitting there listening to records. And I'm like, here, try this one.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like kids in a candy store. So we went to Miami, did the video, and sweetest guys in the world, just, but always was like, when are you going to give me my records?
Yeah, right.
Man, somebody got screwed in that deal. And I think it was you.
But man. You know what? From MTV, which taught me how to trust my creative instincts in an analog world and get out messages and ideas starting with 15 seconds, then 30 seconds, and 60 seconds, culminating in a very avant-garde collage show I made with a partner, John Klein, called Buzz in 1990, which at the time was like predated. It was way, way, way ahead of its time. So storytelling was always like non-linear and kind of impressionistic, and what we know now as content, 2-minute sound, image, text, right? But we kind of created that at MTV, right? So then documentaries were a natural form. Working with poetry was a natural thing. And it wasn't until I moved and did Jeremy and an Anthrax video after that, which were the first narratives, like starting to tell a story in the form. And I remember Jeremy was like, okay, events, cause and effect, events that happen from a beginning, middle, and an end. All the videos before had all been collages, right?
Sure, yeah.
So learning about narrative, learning about characters, moved to Hollywood, met my wife, make my first movie. Then got lucky enough to do Arlington Road, which was a real baptism.
Yeah.
And then just keep going up and down, business changes, tragedy in life, ups, and then like you kind of like your life goes one way and the Hollywood goes another way, and you're like, but you always believe in yourself, right? You always believe in your ability to tell stories, but your taste is your taste. Kept making videos, kept making TV pilots, Blind Spot, Cold Case. I just kept working. And then I think COVID was kind of like a real, what I consider now the beginning of the third phase of my life. I'm 62. Maybe I'll teach. Maybe I'll talk more in I wrote a book about the first 40 years. It's coming out next year. It's called The Visualist. And it's like videos, documentaries, commercials, movies from analog to 1985 to 2025, right? 40 years of process, like a big DVD commentary. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anecdotes, stories. What was it like cutting 3/4-inch tape? How do you develop a style? Videos that don't get made, editing, like every anecdote, every story, but I think for filmmakers and students and fans of the different mediums, I think it'll be an interesting read, and maybe podcasts. Maybe I could just, bring different people on and talk about different experiences.
Oh, that's
For
awesome.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got a wild variety throughout your career. Two things that I wanted to ask you about that definitely caught my eye. One, on Jerry Maguire, you got credited as a bachelor party film consultant, which I want to know about that. And then on Homicide: Life in the Street, you apparently were also doing title design.
I got nominated for an Emmy Award for that.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Okay, well, in 1990, I don't know what year that was, 91 or 92. I'm from Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Barry Levinson's from Baltimore. And I had not done a movie yet. I had not done any narrative yet. And I knew a girl, but I was pretty well known for like videos and titles and stuff like that. And the girl said, oh, you should do the titles for Homicide. We'll pitch you to Tom Fontana and Barry. So I met them.
Wow.
And, being from Baltimore and stuff like that. And Barry Levinson was just like, we don't want some guy just walking through the door like, hey, it's Magnum PI. And at the time, title sequences could be anywhere from 50 seconds to 80 seconds. They were their own form, right? So I said, all right, I want to go to Baltimore and shoot the city and shoot the inside of the Homicide station, day, night, all on 16 millimeter, black and white film, reversal, print stock, all these different things, shot like 9 hours of footage, cut it all together. I made this great 10-minute piece, showed it to Barry, and he's like, oh, don't worry about the nighttime stuff. Just keep it daytime and inside of the station house. I remember shooting like Yaphet Kotto and John Polito with like a little inky light and Bolex, like swinging the light around. So it's just and they're like, oh, what is this, art school? You know, it's like, right. I knew what the fuck I was doing.
Right.
And anyway, that was the story of that. And then a few years later, I got to direct an episode with James Earl Jones, Jeffrey Wright, and Broadway legend Lynn Thigpen, right? And it was the third episode in a trilogy to start the season. And my first scene, the first day, was a 10-page scene with James Earl Jones. Like, he knew the character. This is the third part of a trilogy.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Never done episodic TV. You're just there as a traffic cop, right? And he does the first take, like an 8-page monologue. And I'm just like, I'm a director. I better say something to him.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, so I go over and I'm trying to just basically tell him between these two big 4-page chunks of monologue to take a bigger break in between the two. Right now, I would have just gone and walked away. I go talk to him for 2 minutes and trying to direct and intellectualize. And he goes, son, worked with a lot of directors. First timers, experienced pros. You don't need to use so many words. Just tell me to take a bigger pause.
Oh my God.
Years later, I'm doing a Bell Atlantic commercial with him, and I reminded him. Of course, he didn't remember. Yeah. But I said, you gave me one of the best pieces of advice ever as a director in on that show.
Wow.
So that's my Homicide A/B story and PM Dawn.
That's great. Yeah.
I got. Can I? Andy, do you have something?
Just the Jerry Maguire one.
Oh yeah,
Jerry Maguire
party.
I was friends with Cameron Crowe. Cameron lived in Seattle. Cameron was friends with Pearl Jam, friends with Alice in Chains. Yeah. His wife Nancy Wilson from Heart. Like he was friends with them all. Yeah. So after Jeremy, he reached out and was like, "Hey, I really, really like that video." Blah blah blah. I met him. I was a huge fan of his. And for a little while, he became kind of like a mentor. There's some short stories that I wanted to option. This is just when I was spending time in LA, trying to like move out of videos into that. And he became kind of a mentor, a friend. And I'll never forget, he came on some commercials that I shot. At the time, I was doing a bunch of sports commercials like Reebok and a little Nike thing at the time, which weren't like Nike things now, and he came and it was like, I just want to come and take some notes. So as you know, like it was the movies about that world.
Yeah.
And God, 1995, whenever, I met him at the Formosa and he hands me this script. He goes, I wrote a character based on you. I'm like, what? I wrote this character, Bill Dooler. He's Jerry Maguire's best friend. He's a commercial director. He throws him his bachelor party, blah, blah, blah. I read the script. I'm like, okay, great. Who's going to play me? In the interim, he goes, I'm making this bachelor party film. Will you help me? I'm like, sure. It's the film that they show at the bachelor party. So he had shot some stuff. So we shot some more people. Me and my partner, we shot some more people. And like, as you know, they were all ex-girlfriends of Jerry. Cut like a 7-minute version of it or whatever. So we just were feeding him some stuff for that part of the film. Then one day he goes, I want you to audition to be in the movie. And I'm like, what? Yeah, you should play yourself.
Wow. And they're making you audition for it.
Yeah, right.
And I auditioned for him and Gail Levin. And he's like, that was good. So I'm like, okay, good. Is that good? Can I go now? And a month later, he goes, I want you to come in and read with Tom Cruise for James Brooks. I was like, get the fuck out of here. He goes, just be yourself. So the scene was at the bachelor party. I walk in with Cruz, and I'm like, and the scene got cut. And I'm like watching the bachelor party, but people aren't laughing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, Jerry, there's a seething wrongness with this. This is like people, so, a longer scene. And I audition, and I guess the sight gag of me next to Cruz, Jim Brooks is just like, ho, 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 ho. Cruz is like,
yeah.
And I leave, and I see this red-haired girl, Renee Zellweger. She laughs. She goes, they must have liked you. And I leave, and I'm driving home, and Cameron calls me. He goes, you got the role.
And then you got cut.
That scene got cut, but I'm in 6 scenes.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
That residual checks too.
Hey,
that's outstanding. That's awesome. Man. That's so funny.
And I was also in Almost Famous. I played the doorman in Almost Famous.
So oh my God!
I auditioned to play Lester Bangs, which was the role that Phil Hoffman did.
Yep.
But I went and I said, "No, dude, this requires an actor." But Cameron's like that. Cameron likes just to explore, and that's what's great about him. We're still good friends.
That's awesome.
That's outstanding.
That's awesome.
Big fan. I've got 2 narrative questions. One of them I'm obligated to ask because we just did Mothman on another podcast that we do, and the entire conceit of this show is it collects as part of our horror podcast that we do, and the entire conceit is around when the horror is ultimately unexplainable, right? That we're just scared because of the nature of this thing that has no obligation to explain what or why it's doing the things to us that we're doing.
Exactly.
And I'm curious how you rationalize that angle as the filmmaker behind this thing, because that seems to be, and we're big fans of it. Let me say that first. But it seems to be when people are critical of the movie, it's that they don't get that part of it, that it's unexplained with intention, because that's the horror of it. Am I lying to you in any way, shape, or form with that assessment? How did you think
well, I think there's seeing and explaining it are 2 different things. In the process of rewriting the film and coming on board and taking old drafts where they were seeing more of it, I was like, that's less interesting to me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't into the paranormal. I didn't my father had Alzheimer's and would sit there and be like, and talk to like his 7th grade friend. Like, I believed in the power of subjectivity and the power of the mind to imagine whatever it wants, right?
Yes.
So that's what I was into. And I said, the less we see the monster, right, the thing coming towards you, flash towards Deborah Messing, or it's in a drawing, and in that particular thing, it could be Indrid Cold with the shape, or Mothman. And there's a lot of permutations of the form that the entity could take. And the nonfiction book that John Keel wrote, a phone call, a light, as Alan Bates says, an energy, a light, a God, it can take a lot of different forms, right? Like a lot of different forms that could unnerve somebody. A weird sound, a light. Like, what is it? What is it outside of our worldview of energy, really, that makes people uncomfortable, that manifests itself in fear? And it's that unknown. And I tapped into being in 6th grade and being afraid of the dark and seeing shadows. And my brain told me that, whether it was there or not, and it wasn't, but my brain was very powerful. So I just locked into that. And then not explaining it, I'm like, how do you explain the unexplainable?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we got into trouble with people where we tried to say, because the truth is there was a real logical reason why the bridge collapsed, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But we were like, whoever, in the end of the movie, we never explained why the bridge collapsed, meaning, it was just some larger thing. Mm-hmm. A few critics are took us to the mat for that.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, we're not making a documentary. How did it feel? Right. So the minute you want to make something a little bit less black and white, you're going to eliminate a lot of the culture, right? And that was then 20 years ago. But 22 years later, and last year I showed it at a horror film fest in Erie, Pennsylvania. The movie fucking held up.
Yeah,
and why does it hold up? Because it kind of works on that classic level, right? You know, like The Fog. I love Rupert Wainwright. The Fog doesn't hold up, right? But Mothman holds up because it was grounded by like Don't Look Now and Nicholas Rogue and like those kinds of things that were, you don't know something's going to hold up years later, but the fact that it does and sitting there with an audience and feel like this could be made yesterday.
Totally.
And it's because of that thing. So we're developing as a TV series. We're really close to getting it made as a series, right?
Oh, really?
And the woman from the studio was like, yeah, but we need to know exactly what Mothman is and who it is and what it means. And I said, respectfully,
yeah.
I'm on this project to protect the fact that you're not going to know that. Yeah. You can give possibilities. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But the minute you start to name it and say what it is, you will lose every Mothman fan out there, because the appeal of it is that you're not sure, and people assign their own meaning and bring their own sense of experience and fear to it. And that's what.
Yeah. I think that just nails it, because this film is maybe on the spectrum of audience participation, sort of asks more of the viewer to bring the things you're scared of, right? The fact that you don't show me Mothman makes me interpret the movie through the lens of my own fear. And I think, we talked recently about Skinamarink, which is one of those movies that, like, it exists in your own fear, right? You're seeing stuff that you're creating that they didn't put on screen. You're creating the fear. And I think that's the kind of participation. It's a very trustworthy movie, Mothman, in that regard.
Yeah, and I like Skinamarink a lot, because you feel it. I'd like to see it on a big screen. I only saw it on a small screen. I'd love to see it. Like, I did stuff for you too. Worked with you too in the Sphere on the back. I'd love to see that on the Sphere.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Right.
Huge.
Well, absolutely.
But to finish that up.
Yeah.
Like, and the good thing with Mothman is Mothman, but Indrid Cold and Will Patton sees this thing coming through this hole in this abandoned factory, and its shoulders like that. The only reason its shoulders like that is because literally 40 feet high in the abandoned brewery was a silhouetted shape that kind of hunched to the left. I was like, and it's out of focus, a guy walking out of focus, backlit with smoke, shot in infrared. There's no effect. It's all just pure energy. Out of focus. You don't know what it is, but you know it's, as he says, it looked human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
It's coming towards you. That fucking, you put the right sound in it, that shit will that can scare anybody.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right over your shoulder right now. If I told you over your shoulder,
don't. I'm looking at my own camera. I don't want you to see.
I'm the voice of Indrid Cold,
Yeah, I know.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Andy. What are you wearing, Pete?
So,
you're wearing a blue and black sock.
We love you, Mark. Don't be a dick.
To that point, though, the sound design was spectacular. Like the recordings and everything. Like, I mean, that really just kind of like grates at my soul when I'm listening to those things. It's
Claude Letessier, French guy, had done Thin Red Line, and I hired him before I hired the DP.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart. Yeah.
Wow.
It was very important.
And Liza Richardson, the music supervisor, gave me just piles of CDs of just stuff like weird ambient British band, Otekra and Biosphere, just weird shit. That was like, ooh, that's good. We'll use that. Right.
Finding the right things.
Play on top of it, mix it with the sound design. I can't wait to make the series or a sequel to the movie.
Well,
I'm just my cup runneth over
already
with
ready
the
to
excitement.
watch it.
Like, I'm ready now. Yeah.
Me too.
I want to change gears. Speaking of this aspect of audience participation, right? Asking of the audience to bring the emotional weight to the movie. I want to talk about nostalgia, and I don't know that I couldn't have watched that movie 2 years ago and really understood it. But then my dad died, and I found myself in the place of nostalgia. So I watched the movie, and I'm blown away at the power of legacy, and I'm curious where that sits for you in sort of what you live for, what you want to die having done.
Wow. Well, that's thank you for watching it. I'm really proud of that movie, super proud, and got it paid for it myself with my brother, made my money back, got it out in the world. Was like, fuck it, I'm going to go make this movie for under $1 million. Got some good.
You got a stacked freaking cast, man.
It's awesome. Yeah, incredible.
Well, it was a good piece of material. Alex Ross Perry, a great writer, and I had been interested in memory and mortality probably ever since I made a documentary about my father and his battle with Alzheimer's in 1993, 94. So even the videos after that, Leonard Cohen, the Connells, and many videos after that played with this idea of memory and mortality and identity. And then my wife died in 2004. You add that onto it. Shirley MacLaine movie I made, The Last Word, How Does a Woman Want to Be Remembered? So I was always really interested in that stuff. Was always a collector, was always a collector of objects and books and physical media. I'm doing a TV show right now we're developing called The Collectors. So I've always just really been interested in that. And what you leave behind and what is the especially in an increasingly non-tactile world, what is the power of an object, right? And this had come from memorabilia and my dad dying, and what do I want to hold on to? What are we going to sell? And just like collecting stuff over time, and what do I give away? What do I keep? Oh, you're a pack rat, you're a hoarder. But like, but one person's junk is another person's treasure. So I was always really, really interested in that stuff. So I had a file that really started even maybe 2008, ideas, anecdotes, stories, a treatment for a video, like music video, like 4 or 5 minutes is the perfect length to tell an idea. Like there's a fire, and what does somebody take out of a burning house? Like that's a great idea for a music video. You could follow somebody around and like they go in their drawer and they take this thing and they run outside and they decide, like you could tell that story in 5 minutes if you want. So I had that treatment and things I had written about my wife and I had like a 30 or 40 page file of stuff. It was called The Death of Nostalgia. So I was processing and working through this stuff in my own healing, right? And, like in grief recovery. And when I met Alex, I said, God, I'd love to do something with this material. I sent it to him, and Neil LaBute had sent me a play because I was looking to do something small. And Neil had sent me a play about a brother and sister going through their parents' possessions. Right. And I said, well, that wasn't that, but that gave me the idea of those two characters.
Yeah.
And Alex and I, he kind of wove together we said, okay, let's make it like an album that unfolds. We discussed, should there be an event, like a memorabilia thing like Nashville? Should they all come together? Or should it be, and I didn't want to make it like $20, like only follow the object, although we kind of do that with the baseball, but let one character kind of like an album. Before you know it, you're listening like Sandinista, right? Like, oh, okay. Wow, before you know it, you're listening to fucking Jimmy Jazz or, like a dub thing, but you started with Police on My Back. So,
right.
Let it unfold. Again, you're also asking actors only to be in it for a certain amount of time, which is better in that period of time from Thanksgiving to Christmas when nobody's working. And back then in 2017, 18, you could do that. right? Actors are like, sure, I'll come do it. Pay me X, shooting in LA. And so it kind of unfolded like that. Alex wrote it, paid him, done, made it, got it out there.
I mean, there's some uncanny stuff. I mean, just in terms of how human the movie feels to me now, that, you know, the sequence where Offerman's talking to Ellen and says, you know, we can take care of you. And she says, you just told me you didn't want to. Like that. I had that conversation with my mother. Like that hits. It's one of those movies that hits me so hard. I feel like I was just run through.
I think if you haven't gone through something like the death of somebody, what to do with their possessions, an older parent, like it's very much like and I've gotten emails and, you know, over time, fans, if you've gone through those experiences, you really relate differently to the film. If you haven't, you don't.
Yeah.
It's like my movie, I Melt With You. If you didn't do drugs with your friends and do a lot of cocaine and alcohol with people in your 20s and experience that part of thing, and then hate yourself 20 years later, then you hated the movie. Right? And like, okay, so that movie came out of that set of experiences. Nostalgia came out of that. I don't think I wanted to, because I recut my first movie, Going All the Way, and Oscilloscope released that. I literally was telling the editor the other day, I said, let's recut Nostalgia.
Oh, wow.
Let's just make a new version of it. Right? Like Soderbergh's my hero, right? He recuts fucking Days
all the
of
time. What do you want to get out of a recut like that?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that didn't make it in, and I'd like to do a version that's less, like I watch it now and it just feels very slow and sentimental. And I found an old, like 8-minute teaser we had made that was a lot more aggressive. I just like squeeze everything in and just make it, you know, just a different energy.
Yeah.
Like I watched it the other night. Part of it was like, and I watched John Ortiz out by, you know, like out where he comes out and goes through the burn thing.
The wreckage,
and looks there and takes a picture of it and says, lives lived. And at the time I was like very moved by that, but now I'm like, okay, like maybe just take the picture. I don't need to comment on it.
I just saw it. I just saw what you said there. Don't worry.
Right? But when you're making it, right, when you're making a piece of music and you feel a certain way, I was fucking sad.
Right.
Fuck. And you make it and you're like, and that's what's great about it. And years later, you can look at it and be like, fuck, that was sentimental, or that was.
Well, do you know, it's one of those movies, it's one of those experiences where I feel like I don't know if it's a good movie because of how strongly I felt while watching it. Like I brought so much of myself to that movie and the experience of it. Like I don't think I could come back and give you a proper critique of it because I loved my experience of it so much.
And it had a lot of fans and I actually think it's probably one of my higher Rotten Tomatoes scores as in that world, because there was a lot of really good reviews, and then the people that didn't connect to it, they didn't connect to it. Right? And like,
what are you gonna do?
If you didn't experience something like that, I remember saying, I think older critics are going to like this better than younger critics.
I believe it.
People with no attention span, it moves too slow for them, blah, blah, blah. You know, it doesn't fucking matter. You throw it on the pile and let somebody discover it 5 years later, 20 years later, it's there.
That's it.
I think Ham's really good in it.
Ham is so good.
Ham
is, he's my spiritual brother, though. I feel he doesn't even. We've never met, but I'm sure we'd get along famously.
He's a good guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Before we switch to Moneyball, I do want to ask about Arlington Road, because that's a film that you made in '99, which was I loved it. It was one of those fantastic endings that just like really kind of hits you. And then, of course, like September 11th and everything happened, and now I'm seeing that you are developing a TV series of it, and I'm just wondering, like, in the scope of the way that the world has changed, like, has that made it easier to get something like that made, or is it harder to, or as far as like the tone of terrorism and all that? Yeah,
we're like floating around, you know. They're still trying to get it made, and it's a great script. And this guy, Seth Fisher, wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, you know, the TV business is like 3 years ago. Like, yeah, well, we want this, we want that. And like, well, we don't want that. Well, we want this, but we don't want this. We want, it's a little dark. I don't know. And now nobody wants anything. And it's fucked. And like, but we still believe in it. And no, it's, like, TV is impossible. It's really impossible. So it's still alive, but like, I don't know. I think things have to change. I think this system has to collapse, and it's broken, and it has to collapse. And out of the ashes, both in movies and TV, I hope some sort of risk taking will reemerge, and some sort of renaissance of like, and you got to do them cheaper, and be like, great, let's just go do it cheap. That's why I like to just develop small movies that I can hopefully get an actor to do. But everything's hard. And TV, there's so many committees and studios, and you know it is, like streamers and algorithms and things.
I know. Yeah, it is.
Thank God we made the movie though.
No,
truly.
Because it was made in the day. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Made by a European company, Polygram financed it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And after Polygram financed it, in 97, fall of 97, shot it in 98, and we finished it. Polygram folded, and Lakeshore was the production company. I think Universal, Ron Meyer saw it and said, fuck this, shelve it, put it direct to video.
Oh my God.
Said this is dark and weird. And Tom Rosenberg, bless his soul, the head of Lakeshore, bought it back, sold it to Screen Gems, and they put it out. It got delayed twice, once because of Columbine and once for something else. And finally it came out. And, you know, at the time, domestic terrorism was the hot button topic, right? And that's why Aaron Kruger wrote it. And I think about that. I just walked out of Civil War, and I was like, God, that makes Arlington Road look like Barney. You know what I mean? Like, but like, that's too real, man.
Yeah.
It's too real for people.
Yeah.
Well, but it's powerful, and I don't know. It's one of those films that it's always stuck with me. Like, it has always stuck with me because like you get to the ending and suddenly it's like you're thinking about all of your neighbors. It's like who lives around me. Yeah.
It subverts brilliantly. It was a great script, and I'll never forget the first time I read it and watching it now. It's the same thing. You turn the page, you're like, oh my God. It's built as this, oh my God, he's going to save the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rug's pulled out. Right?
Yeah.
And you're like,
right.
That's it.
Wow. Well,
the best story about that, and I'll be brief. The original ending is Tim Robbins and Joan Cusack take Jeff Bridges' kid. Like, he lives with them. Right. That was the original ending.
Oh.
And they're out on the lawn and they say, any news yet? And Tim says, maybe New Orleans, maybe Chicago, very specific cities.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to convince Sony to let me do 50 different versions of maybe Baltimore, maybe Atlanta, right? And you could even put the audio, just make 50 different prints for each city.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we tested the version where Jeff Bridges' kid stays with them.
Uh-huh.
And like, it was always testing around the same thing, but women, it tested like 12. with women, like, okay, you're killing the hero and you're taking his kid.
And you're taking the kid, yeah.
It makes you think like those other kids aren't even their kids who blew up his hand, right? Mason Gamble. And I come out afterwards, and it was Aaron Kruger's original vision. Yeah. And it played brilliant. It was fucking perfect, right? It took the dark ending and just took it even further, right? Yeah. It just fucked with you. And I'm in the parking lot, and the producer Rosenberg comes out, and he goes, "God, that was terrible." Blah, blah, blah. He goes, I said, "I thought it was perfect." Well, perfect. That gets in my face, and I'm like, "Dude, it's your movie." Starts coming after me, and a security guard comes up between us. What? Years later, he's like, "We got in a fist fight." And I'm like, "We didn't get in a fist fight. You asked me my opinion." It was the writer's original vision, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
Wow. God, man.
Yeah.
Well,
pushing buttons. That's what it was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff.
Let's talk about one that's less controversial.
Let's give me 5 seconds, okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Bella! Okay, is she gonna be here? Okay. All right, I'm doing a podcast. Thanks. You can keep that in or not.
Okay. All right, let's shift our attention to something less, as Pete said, less controversial. We're going to talk about baseball now. Now, my first question coming into this is, I thought it was interesting reading up about you that your dad played football, and I'm just curious, like, was baseball a thing in your family too, like in the world of sports? No, okay,
Zero.
It was a football family, huh?
I went to boys' school and ball. I played lacrosse. I never played. We didn't even have a baseball team. I was never really a baseball. I liked the Orioles. I was never a baseball fan. I actually was like, but I love Moneyball.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting thing, because there's sports movies and sports fans, and a lot of sports fans like certain sports movies, but then there's other people who aren't necessarily as much sports fans, but they can still just love the sports movies. And this is one of those movies that it's a movie about math and statistics, and like the way that it incorporates into redesigning how baseball is done. And I imagine that a lot of people who are fans of baseball kind of saw this, and likewise, when they read the book and even just learned what the team was doing, were scratching their heads like, is this what baseball is going to be now? And I think that's an interesting element that we definitely deal with in this film.
Yeah, I was always into statistics. Like, even though I was into baseball, like, I would read box scores for all the sports. Like, it's such a weird movie, right? Like, if you tried to get that movie made now, no fucking way, right? But I think it's the power of Michael Lewis's books, right?
Yeah,
and how he takes these things and tells the story. I was even thinking about going on this. They've got a master class in storytelling, and he like teaches it. Like, wow, how he tells the story is really fascinating. The story of a team that used math and the archaic statistical model, pre-algorithmic at the time, really like ground floor, to kind of recalibrate how we evaluate talent. But underneath it, to me, it's about like giving second chances to outcasts. And it's like the Bad News Bears, right? It's like, okay, you're an underarm submarine thrower, and you're going to be on the scrap heap, and your elbow's shit, right? So they basically take chances on a bunch of misfits and put them together and use their brain and their heart and their logic. I think the alchemy of Brad Pitt, who's great in everything, but to me, he's so likable, and him and Jonah's chemistry is so amazing. But look, it's Zalian and Sorkin.
Yeah,
right.
Fuck, and Michael Lewis. I mean, come on. Yeah. So when I met Bennett recently, I mean, I had met him years ago, but reconnected, I was like, God, like, what was that like? Like, and then he took Soderbergh's draft and got Zalian's draft. He kind of did what I did on Mothman. He kind of did a mashup of many of them. He wrote some scenes. but it's so ingenious on the page. I was going to ask him to send me a copy of the screenplay because it's gripping. And I know that Soderbergh wanted to cast, like, the idea of making it docu-style and putting some of the real footage and he wanted to have the real players play themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think Bennett took that, coming from a documentary kind of background, but took the classic architecture of Zalian, who's incredible, right? Just every movie is written. And the dialogue of Sorkin, and Jesus, that's a good soup, right?
Yeah.
When I watch it over and over and over again, and like Wally Fisher's photography and certain choices, like you just stay on him, he's driving and he hears something and turns. It's like stays on a
and you never leave the car. Yeah, right.
Never.
Right.
It's very subjective.
Yeah.
And like Spike Jonze as Robin Wright's new husband, and like that discomfort, and all the scouts and how he dresses down the scouts, and like, I'm gonna point it at Pete again.
Don't
Like,
make me.
it's so great.
Yeah.
So the reason it was on I never tire of watching it, and every time I watch it, I discover something new, some inflection that a character does. Like, you're not believing this Bill James bullshit, are you? Like, every secondary character, every line. Now, I've done that in the past with movies over the time that become these movies I love. Diner, growing up with Diner.
Truly.
Inside Out, 25 times. I knew every line, everything inside out. Other guilty pleasures, League of Their Own, Clear and Present Danger. These movies that just become, All the President's Men.
Mm-hmm.
And so Moneyball is in the pantheon of those movies I adore.
There's something you talk about Sorkin, as a dialoguist, which is, that's his stock and trade, right? The fact that this movie doesn't feel like a heavy Sorkin dialogue movie, we don't get the extended walk and talks. I think for me, as I was watching it again last night, I was looking at it and thinking, what is the Sorkiniest Sorkin part? And I think you get it anytime he is yelling at his assistant to get somebody else on the phone. Those kind of phone montages are the things that feel Sorkin to me. The rest feels incredibly naturalistic dialogue and grounded in the space. Like, there's nothing that takes me out of it thinking people don't talk that way. This feels human to me.
Yeah, watching a scene and you're watching a guy wait for phone calls to happen. You don't cut the other side of the phone call. Get me Dombrowski. Hey, Dave. So you're getting the inner workings of the deal making. Yet you're just like, we're seeing him, and you're like,
and eating, shoving
Yeah,
popcorn in his face.
Like, you're sitting right across from him.
Yeah.
It's like what I like about Draft Day too. Draft Day is moving into that. That's a real guilty pleasure because that's super cheesy. Right? Like Seattle, home of the Seahawks. Like, just
I'm embarrassed.
That's so Ivan Reitman. Eat pancake eating motherfucker. Like, oh yeah. But like Moneyball is really the portrait, and it's so classic. Like, we suck, rise up, the winning streak. It's a great sports movie, right?
Yeah, right.
It's a great outsiders movie, right? It's a great portrait of determination, right? And just like, it just works on all.
Yeah.
It's really weird. It's weird and brainy.
It's a baseball movie that's not really about a lot of baseball.
But it does fit for the baseball, because there are those baseball fans who are like their own little statistician. Like, they're sitting there with their card and they're writing all the hits and the balls, and they're tracking everything as they watch the games. And so it's interesting because it really does. Baseball is a sport that there is already kind of this level of that statistical watching that goes into it for some fans. And so I do think that's an interesting element with this particular film, is that we're actually seeing how even on the inside of building the team, they're trying to figure out how to use those same sorts of tools.
But he made it really clear. He's like, look, we're not trying to replace this, and this. We're not trying to replace one guy and 31 homers and da-da-da. In the aggregate, and I'm not a math person at all, I'm like the worst. We're trying to replace him numerically.
Yeah.
And we need people that get on base, because literally they get on base. And the odds, so literally like, well, where do we predict we're going to be? It's just all that thing of probability. So if you think about the word probability, that really underneath it, it's about faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really like Brad Pitt had faith in Jonah, that there's something here, right? Jonah knew the numbers, but they had faith. He had more faith in the numbers than the players, because Art Howe was like, had no faith. Like Hoffman's like,
yeah.
I just want to put something, that I can show to teams next year on my interviews, right? Then Art Howe's a genius.
Yeah.
But like really, it was like faith in the process. So as a filmmaker, you're like, I know everybody's telling me I suck. I know everybody's telling me fuck off. I know everybody's telling me, why are you making movies? But have faith in yourself, right? Because Brad Pitt's prepared to go down with the ship, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He knows. He's like, all right, well, if it flames out, he gets shit canned, right?
Yeah.
Great scenes with his daughter. It's like, nah, I'll be okay. Like, but he's not arrogant. He goes through all his things, but I think with a different actor, it may have been a different movie, but he's so human and likable. He's never been better to me.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And Hill and Hoffman. I mean, Hoffman is a surly coach. I mean, come on, he's fantastic. The thing that's interesting about this to me is that this is a movie that even if you don't celebrate the baseball part, you can certainly relate to the idea of finding value in the pieces that are still valuable. Like, I don't care if your shoulder's bad. I need you to be able to catch ground balls. Like, that's the skill that I need. I don't care if your knees are bad. I don't care. I'm finding value in parts. And I relate to that. Like, I think maybe again, as I'm getting older, like, I relate to seeing that in people and in myself, and that makes a strong connection for this movie.
Yeah, I think that your connection to nostalgia as well is like that. And ironically, they are leaning into the math, right? Which we know years later, this is where we are as a data-driven, algorithmic, quantitative culture, not qualitative.
Right.
Yet these scouts are like going on intuition, and this is the way it was done. And without it being like, oh, it's about data, like in a way, like there's a new world coming, and we better jump on or we're going to be left behind. Right. So this movie like presaged all of those general managers in the way that baseball is. It was ahead of its time in coming out.
Yeah.
Right. Baseball was just doing that. Right. So I think that's what, Michael Lewis does, and credit to Sony for making that like, now it's a given. Oh yes. Saber, all these data things, put the pitcher, he pitches 2 pitches. That's why they've changed the rules to make it not like that. So guys can't come in and just pitch 1 pitch to a left-hander, then switch him out. Games were 4 hours long, right? So, yeah, it's really weirdly prescient on that level. And you have no sympathy for the scouts that get shit canned that are hanging on to the past. It's not.
They made them the evildoers like that.
It's movie. Cutthroat.
Yeah.
It's cutthroat.
Yeah.
And it just, it works on all those weird levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and think as I keep, whenever it's on, or sometimes I'll just be like, and it's on my DVR and my list, stuff that I save that's on cable. Like, it's just there. Like, I don't put the Blu-ray on. I'll just watch it wherever. And sometimes it's on. I'll just watch it and I always dig it.
As you watch a film, coming at it from, having worn as many hats as you do, like, are you watching for different things intentionally as you watch it, or are you just kind of like sitting there and taking it in, and then as you notice things, you're like, oh, I haven't noticed that before? Like, I mean, do you approach it with these different ways? Because I mean, you had mentioned the reason I'm asking is because you had mentioned Soderbergh earlier and how he kind of does these, he'll go in and recut movies just to see what it's like and stuff. And so I just don't like, I'm curious as a filmmaker who loves to explore, especially somebody who like you like to go in and would take some of your projects that you've done. And like you were talking about recutting nostalgia just to kind of change pace. And I'm just always curious, like, where is kind of like the nudges for like the curiosity, the things that drive you and poke you as you're looking at these things, especially many times.
Well, when I redid my first movie, Going All the Way, it was because, like, Jesus, I was never happy with that movie. And the little company Oscilloscope that released it, I was like, what filmmaker wouldn't want to get a chance to remake, not get paid, you do it for free, but somebody pays $100,000 for you to remake your first film.
Sure.
And put new score, new voiceover, add 20 minutes, take away 30 minutes. Like, you never get a chance to do that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and you make a dance film, and then I'm working on a doc, and like recutting nostalgia is just be like, okay, because I made that where I was in my life then. I'm in a different place now. Hey, nobody's asking for it. Nobody cares for it or wants it. So maybe I give it to my editor and be like, here's a few grand. You want to try and see what happens? And then I could show it to Bleecker Street and be like, what do you think of this? Maybe they say yes. Maybe they say no. Maybe put it on your thing. It's like, the point being, like, you can get a chance to revisit. People remix albums and they re-release songs, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, like, it doesn't, just because you made it, maybe it's like, you know what? I was not, like, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't be interested in doing that on Mothman or Arlington Road or anything else. But like nostalgia, I look at and being like, yeah, there's a lot of footage that didn't make it. And there's a remix of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like rescore it, make it a little more urgent and darker and a little nastier underneath it, or a little just more energetic. Like 85 minutes, not 2 hours, a little less lives lived, just see what happens to it.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that's interesting about the about going back and remaking your first film. It's like the idea that and forgive me, I haven't seen it, but all the commentary that I read about it is that you remade that movie and made it absolutely timeless. Like it is a functionally
different
as the
film. Book was when the book came out, and it had been not like kicking and screaming. Like, you go to Sundance, it's your first movie, and it's a little long, and nobody tells you to make a movie longer or darker, right? We'll take it out.
Right.
And then you're exhausted from making it, and you're like, yeah, it's okay, and it got decent reviews, and you're like, all right, it helped me make my next movie.
Yeah.
Right.
You can work with actors, but I was never really satisfied with it. I never felt like it was as good as the book that I read. So in making it years later, the greatest gift was making it. And the novelist who wrote the screenplay just died about 6 months ago, Dan Wakefield. And to get him to see it before he lost his eyesight, right, and show it in Indianapolis, he got to see the premiere of his movie twice in his life.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
Right? And just for him to see it, and he goes, that's the book. Right? And that was the book. So the friendship, not the sex comedy, but the friendship.
Yeah.
And the frustrating part is, I think Oscilloscope didn't have as much luck with like selling it to a streamer. The business is so tough, but like you never give up, and you can go to Amazon and they'll point you in the right direction, and the original's there with commercials and like, doesn't matter.
It on
it's
some
out
fast
in the
service.
world. It can be discovered.
Yeah,
you know, it's just like sitting in my computer does no good. Like, it's got to get out there. And as you get older, you become less precious. I made a dance film for $7,000, and Kino Lorber released it. It was like, okay, I wanted to make this thing, and I made it and put it in Slam Dance. And like, who wants a $7,000 dark dance film? Not many people, but it's out there.
But it's out there.
Yeah, right.
And you add to it, and you're like, okay, it got me through something I wanted to get through and express about grief that you can't do in words, and you could do in music and dance. And that opens you up, and it's like, fuck it. Just, it's so hard these days, and there's no judgment, and there's TikTok, there's all this, everything.
Yeah.
As an artist, you just gotta like trust your instincts and do the best you can, and use any opportunity to create that you can. Today, I'm finishing a $40 budget, an 8-minute music video.
8 minutes.
For a band, and it's about the issue in Palestine and Israel, and it's kind of non-partisan.
Okay.
But it's like literally like, I can't watch this stuff and not make something or do something. Yeah. And I haven't made a video in a while. It's just like the footage is there. Shoot the singer, this old guy with an iPhone and a flashlight. Just make the shit, right? Like, so I'm getting that way more towards like movies of just like, how low can you go? There's a filmmaker, he's made 4 movies. His name's Matthew Porterfield. Made a movie called Sailor's Point, Putty Hill. He makes them all under $1 million in Baltimore. Like, really good. 22 days, $700,000. People are doing it.
Yeah.
Like, to sit there and say, I need 5 million, like, because you wait around. I'm 62. I have a lot of shit I want to make. So the way I can make it is make it cheap.
Yeah.
And like, it'll look like a movie. And if actors can want to be in it, it's more important to make it than to, you know what I mean? Because that's where we are. For guys in my generation, you know, if you don't make Love Lies Bleeding and you're not like the hot person, great film, by the way, Love Lies Bleeding.
Outstanding film. Yeah.
Great film. Yeah. But like, great. She's having her moment. She should.
Yep.
She's a great filmmaker, right? So you make stuff. I've made 9 movies. Doesn't matter. It's harder and hard. It's hard for all filmmakers.
Yeah.
I'll go have lunch with Wayne Kramer, who made The Cooler, or other people. It's like, it's really hard to get a movie made.
Well, I mean, Bennett Miller, this is, you know, he's made Foxcatcher since this, you know, and since 2011, one other film. I mean, yeah, it's hard to get these sort of.
I said, Bennett, you got to move a little faster.
Maybe.
He's been working on a documentary for 5 years. That's
really?
Gonna be mind-blowing. Yeah. Do you know he does AI art? He has these incredibly beautiful portraits, photo portraits made in AI.
Okay.
Just check out Bennett Miller Gagosian Gallery. And they're like 19th, early 20th century photographs, all made by AI.
Fascinating.
No, he's a brilliant, smart, really nice guy.
You had some anecdotes that he told you about making this. Do you remember what they are? Are they ones you could share? Maybe not.
You know what? If I texted him now, I could ask him.
That's okay. That's okay.
As I said it before, I realized I should have asked him. Can I tell the story you told me about? Blah blah blah.
Right.
All right, we'll take it. That's
totally
fine.
Totally fine.
It's just good. It's good to know that the stories are out there. Just somebody knows them, even though we don't.
Everybody goes through them, right? And I'm sure you guys have heard them. And, it's the kind of connective fuel, and you hear it from all filmmakers. You hear it from 28-year-olds to 75-year-olds. Like, there's that passion, right? That burn. And it's hard to make a movie even when the business is in good shape, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's this like groundswell of like, like at what point are you just, it's my friend Ted Hope is a producer. Ted Hope like spawned the careers of Ed Burns and Ang Lee, and with James Schamus coming to Good Machine, right? Like just basically created that 90s indie cinema. And he's just like, you gotta make movies so cheap. There's gotta be a reaction to the system because it's just gotten so difficult and so much fear and so numbers driven. I made 5 movies for a company called Lakeshore. Tom Rosenberg was like, one guy, if he liked the script and got the script right, he'd be like, this is what we're making it for, get a good cast. And that was it. I've never made a studio movie. I've always made independent movies. I've been attached to 8 studio movies and they never got made.
Jeez. It's
gotta make your stuff.
It's interesting. Just the stories that you're telling, it really does. And just the fact that we're talking about Moneyball and everything that Billy Beane had to go through to make these changes. And as you said, like he's putting his whole career on the line with these decisions, but he's going whole hog. That's exactly kind of the mentality that like people like you and other filmmakers, indie filmmakers, need to be taking in order to change this system.
Well, you make a good point. His owner, right? Think about the Oakland A's now are going to play in a minor league stadium for 3 years in Sacramento before they go to Vegas, right? So that franchise, even before Moneyball and subsequent, has been a disaster, right? And the owner in the movie, the owner's like, this is what I got. We're never going to be this. So Billy Beane was really like super dogma 95, right? He's like, I don't have any money.
Yep.
I'm going to get Hatterberg and this guy for peanuts because every year we build stars, they're going to leave, right? And it happens all the time in sports. Now it's college sports. Leave for the next best thing. In college sports, everybody's a free agent. You can go play wherever you want at any time, right? Sports are like, so now anybody can go play anywhere. Contracts mean a little bit in certain pro sports. So Moneyball was really like tapping into that.
Yeah.
They have no money. I got to put together a team for a budget, right? Like Moneyball was super indie.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And like, okay.
That's how do we compete?
One of my favorite lines is like, playing first base is easy. Tell him, Wash. And Ron Wash is like, incredibly difficult. And that guy now is the manager of the Angels, right?
Yeah.
Who suck.
That's so good.
He got thrown to the wolves, that guy. I think about him all the time in that movie.
The other one is, hey man, what's your biggest fear? Oh, anytime a ball gets hit in my direction. No, seriously, man. No, seriously. Anytime a ball gets hit in my direction.
Chris Pratt's never been better. And I tell you, Chris Pratt's an actor that I wish he just acted more.
Yeah.
He's gotten into a space of being Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
What's the last movie he really played a dimension? Like, no offense to like Galaxy, and those are entertainment.
They're all great.
Nothing is entertainment.
But one of the best things he's done to date is Parks and Rec, right? He's incredible.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been awesome, man.
Really?
Well, I love the film. I love talking to you guys about it and all the other stuff. Point the viewers to, my website, markpellington.com. There's all the videos and all the docs and all the stuff, and go into a section called The Vault, and there's all sorts of goodies in there.
And you'll have a link for your book when it's out on there too.
Yep.
Right?
It's called The Visualists.
Excellent.
Coming out next year, Powerhouse Books. And I'm just going to keep going until they tell me to sit on the bench. And even then, I'll keep going.
You just got to keep going. Yeah. That's
you got to keep going until your number's up, man.
And I mean, that especially like being a creative, being somebody with like an artistic mind is like, that's what drives you, right? It's like always kind of making something, churning it out. And I think that's what's exciting is what is the new thing and just kind of like, what can you do next? And I think that's what's inspiring about talking with you and just hearing how you have moved through so many different areas within the industry, and yet it's always just like trying to click and like come up with something. And I think that's what's so exciting. And again, it's just the whole connection. It's just interesting talking about Moneyball with all of this, because I just feel like there's so much of that connection with it. Yeah,
I'm trying to learn. Like I'm, especially the last couple of years, really try to learn and look and absorb. And when I was doing that U2 stuff and helping them at the Sphere, and like, because I love to do this immersive stuff and like visual stuff, and maybe I teach and maybe I write a book, or maybe there's a lot of different ways to be creative. I do a lot of like photography and still art. Maybe I move more into that. Like, I know what the grind of getting a TV show is made, and like, that's a grind, but like, I'm not going to let that be. There's got to be other ways to express yourself and think about the world critically and visually. You can be visual and critical and think and not just keep beating your head against the wall with corporations and agencies and chase actors where you're basically powerless, and unless you're like one of like 5 people, it's like the Chateau Marmont private room, like, hello, right? Like, if you don't have access.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I'm sure most of us on and listening to the show can't even relate to that joke. It's so inaccessible.
I've had more actors that sat on my couch and couldn't get arrested and couldn't get, because they didn't mean anything. Yeah. And then they become big stars, and you can't, like, hello, that's the shot. Hello, Amy, hi. Oh, hello, Mark. I fondly recall talking about your little art piece. I'm sorry,
I can't take your call right now.
I'm taking the carriage to the castle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, might I have some more? All right. Well, I mean, it has been a fantastic conversation, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Stories. It's been a thrill.
You guys take care. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us today. For everybody else out there, we hope you like the show, and certainly hope you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like.